So welcome to the MLOps Live webinar series, the place where we talk about bringing data science to production and seeing real business value from your Gen AI and AI initiatives. Really happy to see you all here with us today. We've got a great session coming up. My name is Sahar. I'm the VP of Marketing at Iguazio, McKinsey, acquired by McKinsey, so now part of McKinsey. And today we're going to be talking about implementing a Gen AI smart call center analysis app. It's a really interesting use case. We're seeing a lot of interest in this specific one from clients across verticals, and we're really here to discuss all of the different aspects of this topic with you today. With us is Oana Chida, who's the partner and lead Gen AI service ops for North America with McKinsey and company. Very happy to have her with us today. She's going to give us an introduction to Gen AI and customer care, driving forces, business impact, what the main applications are, what kind of trends and capabilities she's seeing from her work with clients, and of course, pitfalls to avoid. There's a lot of kind of knowledge that's been built up on this specific topic. We also have our very own Yaron Haviv here with us today. Yaron is the co-founder and CTO of Iguazio, which was acquired by McKinsey last year. He's going to be talking with us about building Gen AI for production, overcoming some common implementation challenges, setting the right foundation and the right architecture to really help you scale and succeed with your Gen AI initiatives. He's also going to share a Gen AI-based smart call center analysis app case study of a client, a bank, that implemented this in their business environment, and also showing us a live demo on how to build this kind of call center analysis app. As always, we'll be taking your questions live. I know that's always an interesting kind of part of the webinar, so please feel free to fill in your questions in the Q&A tab throughout the session, and we'll take them live, all the questions at the end. We'll do our very best to get to all of them. We'll also be running 2 polls during the session, so please do fill those in. They help us make these sessions as valuable as possible for you, and we'll make sure to share the results with all of you live. We'd like to invite you to join our MLOps Live community, where we'll be continuing the conversation afterwards and answering any additional questions you might have post-webinar. And we're now putting everyone on mute. We'll be recording the session so that we can send it to you right after. And without further ado, we'll get this party started. And I'm very happy to invite Oana to join me here today.
Thanks so much. I thought
Great
we'd
to have you,
start.
Oana.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for the invitation. We thought to start with a bit of a landscape when it comes to customer care and how excited are we right now to actually be able to leverage Gen AI. As we're thinking about the world of customer service operation or customer care, we're still facing some fundamental pressures when it comes to productivity and quality. Secondly, we're excited that we can push that technological frontier as we're adding this new capabilities and changing the deployment paradigm that allows us to actually focus on product innovation as we're bringing co-pilots and hyper-personalization. And last but not least, we see an opportunity to capture more market share and potentially see that as a threat by others. As we're seeing the customer expectations are changing, are evolving fast, the competitors are moving. You have new competitors coming to the market, but we have the possibility to orchestrate and serve the customer care space with different models, different products, and that are really enhanced by technology. While the productivity gains tend to be across industries, it's more from a functional perspective. What we're seeing the development on the right-hand side, both product innovation and competitive shifts that are more sector specific. If we go to the next page, please. As we're leveraging this, we're enabling new powerful capabilities to deploy and scale AI. The one thing that I would obviously recognize is we're tapping into unstructured data we were not able to tap into before. You're talking about text, you're talking about access to your knowledge management, PDFs, emails, images, other modalities that we're bringing them together. So that has to do with synthesis, mass automation, specifically related to content generation, but we're also seeing how do we actually understand and interpret data that are extracting and giving us more insights at scale and faster insights for that matter. The human element is key when it comes to customer service. So we're actually seeing more human-like interfaces that are allowing us not just to serve better the customer, but at the same time to go over adoption hurdles that we've had before. The last thing that I would mention here is as we're kind of moving to the right, we're actually seeing the possibility to leverage pre-trained models to deploy many applications. So as we're moving more towards product innovation, as the paradigm is changing, we're able to reduce the model development burden. And I know Yaron is going to speak to this, but also Gen AI is less data hungry than we've seen AI before. And it's allowing us to unlock applications faster and better. The one thing that I wanted to point here as well before we're moving on to the next page is we're predicting the customer care, how it's going to look in the next 5 years. It's exciting to see the hyper automation that is consistent with the productivity gains. So again, how do we actually focus on automating 90% of customer context potentially, but how are these interactions changing, which are more connected to innovation and competitive shifts around AI to AI interactions that most likely will constitute between 30 to 50% of the interactions in the next 5 years. We would actually have more voice to voice that is not distinguishable basically from human interaction, and a consolidation of the channels when IVR, chat, and virtual assistants are converging into a channel agnostic AI. All of these are enhancing experiences. That's kind of leveraging us, allowing us to move into more of the competitive shift. That's connected to more low-cost pressure and simpler switching. Next page, please. As we're seeing a lot of the focus in this first year of Gen AI, last year of Gen AI on models and more productivity application, I'm personally very excited to see things move more towards an end-to-end domain reimagination. And in McKinsey, we have been talking a lot, how do we actually change, focusing on domain, customer care being one of the key ones that we've started with in discussion with many of our clients. And when we're talking about the end-to-end domain reimagination, again, applicable to coding, applicable to finance, but it's really unique when it comes to the customer engagement, specifically as we're finally able to connect service to sales. And we're doing so by stitching the application of Gen AI with other AI capabilities that we have had before. If we go to the next page, please. Let me tell you a bit about what we're hearing from care leaders as part of some of the work that we're doing on an annual basis, part of our state of care survey. These are the 4 priorities, the 4 themes that have been coming out in the last year. The first one has to do with the fact that organizations are reprioritizing their core operations. Operation excellence is something they talk a lot about, together with how do they actually get to exceptional satisfaction level for their customer experience. And the priorities are also multi-dimensional. Basically, we're talking about CX, but we're also talking about revenue generation, again, the connection to servicing, and at the same time, technology transformation. On the second category, which is creating an AI ecosystem that is future ready, we've talked to leaders and 40% of them prioritize technology among their top 3 strategic goals. So I'm talking about care leaders, chief operating officers, senior VPs that are their main focus is operation. Despite 80% of the companies are expecting to spend more of Gen AI, they are expressing some uncertainty around how do they truly get to the full potential and leverage that in order to create self-sustainable programs when it comes to care with AI. They do strive to have all their customer interactions handled by AI. So the aspirations have been changing quite a bit from more of a digital first approach to digital only, or coupled with how do we actually even push in some situations to our sales and maybe opening other capabilities for video versus just the voice. As we reimagine the service network with the innovation hubs, leaders have been talking about how do they work with vendors that provide both services and capabilities for a center of innovation. So half of them are very results focused when it comes to their agreement, and 25% are thinking about making a switch towards results focus when it comes to those contracts that they have with outside vendor. Last but not least, they invest a lot in employee excellence. So 2/3 of the care leaders, they see training and developing supervisors and experienced agents as key to their success. And they recognize that the cost of hiring and training is a major concern. So they're hoping to use Gen AI as well when it comes to not just impacting turnover, but at the same time investing in new ways to onboard and train their employees with AI. Not only that, to actually open new career paths for them and make them own basically their journey in their organization. Next, please. As we're looking at the Gen AI across the care funnel, and this is a visual that you might have seen in our publications, we are talking about demand reduction first and foremost. And that's how do we eliminate some of this demand? How do we proactively reach out to our clients before the moment of need? And if they do, how do we understand our root causes in order to push more to digital channels or actually to route them better? So in this category, we're talking a lot about how do we enable speech analytics with Gen AI, which is exciting, and then how do we kind of connect it to proactive resolution suggestions. This is when Gen AI is kind of providing a fabric for AI and allowing us to leverage the predictive analytics that we've been investing in for a long time in order to get to those benefits. As you're looking at demand reduction, we're seeing a potential decrease in cost between 10 and 25% with Gen AI, and we're really excited about applications such as, post-call insights analysis. Yaron's going to talk about it, but also automated customer data collection, automated policy monitoring. So we're going beyond just the voice channel as well to actually think about how do we impact the end-to-end. Another area that's exciting for us is really the area that brings the voice IVA experiences, the real-time translation, virtual assistants, and so on. So this is morphed onto like the digital self-care in order to maximize that containment. This includes automated ticket resolution. It may include hyper-personalization capability. How do you actually think about a customer-facing AI bot or AI assistant to clients? And this is an area that we've been exploring as well to put more capabilities in the hands of clients. Last but not least, the assisted operational efficiency is how we drive productivity once the call or the contact is actually getting to the operation itself. And this is when we're talking about knowledge management. We're talking about real-time copilots for voice, for chat, and also assistance when it comes to training, quality assurance, or even generation of information. Now, as we're looking at this end-to-end approach, what's exciting, and I mentioned this in the beginning, is we are tapping into sources of data that we haven't had access to before. So how we're actually able to enhance the data you currently have with customer intelligence as to actually continue to support these use cases, we believe that's sort of the winning ticket as we're kind of thinking about optimizing this full customer journey from beginning all the way to care. And as we're kind of unifying these data sources, we're able to tap into them and augment them with third party, with the conversations that are actually happening right now. And we're actually leveraging those as actionable insights as part of the analytics or sort of presentation objects that can be available as part of the business intelligence of the organization. Next, please. These are some of the common Gen AI applications that we're seeing in care. A few things that, if I may just jump into, point out the post-conversation insights. these, obviously, from a productivity perspective, you can easily jump to I'm saving after call work. Yes, indeed. But this is the connection to I'm able to tap into a data source that I haven't had before. I'm able to summarize issues. I'm able to make them available in near real time to other departments, not just services, but maybe complaints, maybe risks. And I'm able to actually leverage this in performance management. So not only that you're enhancing the some of the productivity needs of the organization, but you are supporting your supervisors, you're supporting your frontline staff in order to manage performance better, to have nuggets sent to them when they're available with videos or with recommendations what they would have to refresh their knowledge, or even train their further when they're ready actually to take on new skills, especially when it comes to sales. Another one that I've spent a lot of time recently talking to our clients and working with them on is Live Agent Copilot, which is not just stitching together different Gen AI capabilities in order to focus again on productivity, average handle time, how do you improve quality, first call resolution, but it's also assisting with faster agent ramp up. So how do you integrate that in your organization and ultimately start with the contact center, but then this is reusable for other copilots. If you're thinking about banking, if you're thinking about investment management or other industry, that's exciting to experiment early and put things in production. And then again, leverage some of those capabilities in other parts of the organization. If we go to next page, please. We wanted to offer you another view of this categories of differentiation, just because the use cases and the capabilities are quite diverse, as you see here. And I've taken the liberty to actually divide this in three parts. The first one is, as this is evolving and it's evolving fast, how are we actually thinking about our investments? Is it worth investing at this point in capabilities like after call insights or dynamic knowledge articles, or is this something that ultimately your vendors in your ecosystem are on their way, are already there when it comes to offering those capabilities? As you're considering this, obviously, risk management and the governance that you have in place is meaningful. Not the topic for today's discussion, but something that I would like to call your attention on. As you move to the category in the middle, what's innovative? How are you thinking about those integrated servicing copilots for voice, for chat, or even personal coach for agents that I tapped into before? And then how do you enhance your workforce management capabilities? So we're looking at Gen AI applications to make them meaningful, to make them actionable, and to tie them to business benefits and business strategy. We're very excited to see a lot of the work that's being done right now with our clients, specifically in this category, and as they're kind of looking at leveraging their proprietary data to make those capabilities even more distinctive. And that's more of the use cases to the right. How do you actually generate synthetic data in order to train your agents better? How do you have trainers, specifically dedicated AI trainers, basically dedicated to agents or groups of agents? How do you actually leverage the service digital twin to understand the agent satisfaction and retention, but do the same for customer, of course, and ultimately the voice to voice and provide agents with the customer journey details. If we go to next page, please. This is related to some work that a few of us have done recently with a telco North America, specifically on leveraging their Copilot capabilities, and then they're looking at building this product even beyond this one-time use case. So what's really important to us to understand, this is not a one-time deployment. This is an AI product that needs to be maintained. The collaboration between the business and basically analytics, data science, IT, depending on the organization, is very meaningful to move from having agents waste a lot of their time trying to figure out cumbersome information and trying to move from system to system to put it all together. Then to actually provide basically intelligent predictive supports to agent that allows them to serve the clients better. So what we're actually seeing here is how do you kind of start to orchestrate this capabilities that can manage context, dynamic context switching, which for some of you in care know that we've been struggling with that with NLP over many years. How do you continue to identify the root cause, to do the root cause discovery, again, knowledge extraction, and then select the tools that are needed in order to actually solve the client's need to truly troubleshoot. So what's interesting is we're kind of started to talk about it is Gen AI, but it could be pretty basic data analysis when you don't have to pull out your calculator to provide some information on what's happening over the last three months. You can tap into the customer database to get basic information. You have visibility what's happening across the channels, especially since we know that clients, 75% of clients, as a matter of fact, move from one channel to another. So it's exciting to, again, stitch this all together and even bring predictive analytics here when it comes to what is the next best action. What do I recommend? Could be product, it could be action, and not only be able to get the life summary of the conversation and the sentiment analysis and be able to change gears as needed, but at the same time really kind of move into that value add space that rather than just kind of troubleshooting one specific issue. So it's exciting to see those capabilities. What you see here is a lot of the productivity impact, 40% reduction in average handle time for troubleshooting calls, complex calls. In this situation was chat. So how are we able to impact the cost? And ultimately, how are we able to ramp up agents faster? This is more anecdotal evidence. We haven't quantified the quality side yet, but basically you would have junior agents that are able to actually behave like agents that have been on the floor for about 6 months, which is meaningful. Next page, please. These are things that I'm sure all of you are familiar before, and I think we need an hour just to talk in each about every one of them. What I would actually say on this one is don't experiment in a vacuum connected to business goals. Ultimately, specifically in care, this needs to be part of the reimagining your workflow, what you're doing in the organization. It's not just kind of automating a small task as part of a static process flow, if you will. Don't forget the human experience. I've done work in the past with colleagues. We were always starting with understanding the opportunities, understanding the pain points. How are we actually designing this so it's going to be meaningful, accurate, effective, efficient, yet easy to adopt. So that's another one that I just wanted to emphasize. But ultimately, as you're kind of looking at the lower side, making sure you have the maturity and governance and a performance infrastructure to keep on to measuring those specific outcomes, that's key. I would also say, I want to leave you with this, change management is actually, the cost is quite significant. Sometimes it can be between 2 to 5 times the level of IT effort. So how much you're investing in tech. So taking seriously what is capability building, the new ways of working, reimagining those operations, the workflow, and adopting your staffing models, because you may need to not just recruit for different technical talent, but actually different talent in the contact centers. And that cross-functional collaboration is key. Don't forget to think about how you want to innovate your models when it comes to build, partners versus buy. And last but not least, don't get stuck in experimentation. Flush the pipes and get things in prod. With that in mind, I think we're ready to go to a poll right now.
Yes, thanks so much, Joanna. It's amazing to see the amount of use cases that are already in play and the type of impact that organizations are starting to see with Gen AI. Thank you so much for sharing. Yes, we're going to pause here quickly to go into a poll. There was just a question for you, Oana, about your slides. Richa asked if you can clarify what is CSO here when you talk about CSO programs.
Customer service operations.
Thank you. And when you were mentioning care in the conversation, they're also wondering if you could clarify what you mean. I imagine it's customer care.
It is customer care. Sometimes we call it customer experience. Sometimes we call it service ops in the in the customer care space. So it's basically, as we're kind of going back to that funnel, is the client's requests are coming. They could come through multiple channels. They can be phone calls. They can be emails. They can be even social media nowadays, right? And how are we actually automating some of those responses? And how are we actually addressing the customer issues or opening customer opportunities as we not just focus on productivity, but also additional value add activities for the organization. And I think Yaron is
Perfect.
ready to take over with a demo. I'll take the rest of the
Thank
questions
you so much
later.
for clarifying. Yeah, we'll just run a quick poll because we do want to hear from all of you. So I'll just launch that very quickly. And we are going to be asking you where you are on your Gen AI journey. So thanks, Yaron, for joining. We'll just launch the poll very quickly and we'll get right on it. We've got a lot for you guys in this webinar. So just let us know if you're just learning about Gen AI, if you have a specific use case, if you've begun building a Gen AI app, or if you've already have a Gen AI app in production. We'd love to hear from you. All right. And welcome, Yaron. Thanks so much for joining us today.
So thank you, and thanks, Lana, for all the insights about service operations. I think this combination of, on one end, understanding the space, and on the other, understanding the technology allows us to really address pretty hard client challenges. What we are going to focus now is on how we're solving those challenges, and we're not going to keep everything just in the lab. We want to be able to uh, deliver solutions in production. So with that in mind, what we're going to see is a couple of demos, but let's start with some background and theory. So first, if we want to be able to move to production, many organizations are still in the prototyping phase. We've seen that across the board, building demos, building small-scale solutions in their notebooks. But really, if you want to get to production, you have to start with that in mind, and you have to address all the different aspects of a real-world application. So in order to deal with those challenges that I want to mention, you have to process tons of data, whether it's data of calls and audio, whether it's metadata about client or user and its features and its preferences and so on. This requires data pipelines. You use models. Those models and those applications have to be well tested. So you need to build CI/CD test pipelines and so on. And also you have an application pipeline. This is where the business logic of your application flows in, and we'll see a couple of examples for that. And all of those things have to be designed to be able to be always on, be able to upgrade versions, be able to scale, reduce costs, and so on. And last but not least, we have to be able to monitor all this activity to be able to see if we're introducing risk, if the accuracy goes down, if the resource consumption is very high, and so on. So you need this monitoring and feedback loop in order to build the full application. So these are things that we've been doing on any app and on traditional ML. Just a reminder that we need to do that for Gen AI just as well. When we build a Gen AI application, we usually look at it into 4 different segments of the application that need to be built. The first aspect is the data transformation or data ingestion. This is where we take data from various sources, again, unstructured data mostly, audio, text, files, documents, etc., and index them in various formats, document store, vector storage, and so on. Another aspect is all the testing of the application itself or the model used for the application. Some people overlook that, saying, you know what, we got a model from OpenAI and it's going to work. We don't need to test anything. Just a surprise for you guys. There's some articles where someone changed a version of OpenAI and that broke his application, because new models, even new versions of the same model, can react differently to the same prompt or to the same data. So we always have to be able to validate our models and our applications. In some cases, we may actually fine tune and build a more customized model that generates something more accurate to our clients. We have the application pipeline, which again is very different between one or the other application. We'll see an example here in the Cornell Analytics space. And the final aspect is monitoring all those different assets, activities, models, data, resources, and being able to generate feedback loop as well as observability of where we're going and what's going on in the system. With that, let's go into a specific example of an application and something that we've been building for several clients already in the financial services, telco, and other segments of the market. Everyone looks at Gen AI, and there are obviously risks associated with things like hallucination and so on. So one of the nice things about this application, because it's not responding directly to a client, there's less risk associated with it. You can analyze the calls, generate insights, and then use those insights for whether it's training agents or learning more information about your product and clients, users, and so on. So the application logical flow is simple. You take the audio files from all those recordings of interactions between clients and agents. You convert that to more of a textual chat-like text. You need to do some processing over that text, whether it's reducing privacy elements, removing privacy elements, cleaning things that are not supposed to be there, and so on. Then we're introducing LLMs in order to understand this information in those conversations. And finally, there's some post-processing. When we look into the LLM processing, we can break it to several categories, and it could be infinite. Just imagine the different applications you can build. So, for example, LLMs could do things like summarize. You have an hour call or 15 minutes call. You want to summarize it in 50 words, something that's easy to grasp and understand what's the call all about. Another thing you may want to do is assess the call. Look at the sentiments or the empathy or kindness or professionalism of the agent or the client. Maybe the sentiment of the agent is okay, but the client is very nervous or something. So you can use LLMs to essentially look at the text and tell you what's the sentiment or how the agent is behaving or how the client is behaving within the call. Other aspects are classification. For example, let's categorize the call. Is it about billing? Is it about a broken product, and so on? Or what kind of product? We have 5 products. Which of the products is being discussed in this call? Was the call successful? Did we try and sell something, and did we manage to sell something? And so on. You can continue as many such classification questions as you want. You can extract topics like what are the common complaints people keep on mentioning in their calls? What are the new features they're asking about for our products, and so on. And you can also do things that are targeting more the training of the agent, specifically like uh, usually in those call centers, you have a script. The agent needs to say something in the beginning and then something in the middle and then something at the end. You can see is the agent really following the script of the call, or he was making some answers and those answers are not really compliant or not the best answers. We can make suggestions saying you should have said that. Or we can rate agents based on different performance metrics. So all of those different applications that you see here are essentially just prompts to the LLM asking questions, and I'll show that in a second, and collecting the results from all those prompts and all those questions into a table finally that we can use for different applications. This is an example of an application we built for one of the clients that just demonstrates some of those things I mentioned. This is like showing the different agent, empathy, professionalism, kindness, and so on. You have things like topic extractions. This is like a call progress analysis showing how the call is moving according to the expected steps and where the agent wasn't behaving according to the script and what was he's saying and what he should have been saying. So this is an example how we can actually use that for training the agents, not just to see what's going on in the calls. How is the backend going to look like? This is a simplified view of the pipeline. We're going to see that in a second in some of the notebooks. And this is, by the way, all open source. The sources are exposed. We'll show you where to find them. So the baseline pipeline is essentially taking those audio files, breaking the audio files to essentially 2 channels of a client and an agent talking. So we can make it like client saying this, agent saying something else. We convert that audio into textual understanding, so transcribing it using an open source model called Whisper. We're removing risk by doing PII filtering, removing private identifiers from the text. And then we do all this sort of LLM analysis and summarization, and essentially after post-processing, writing everything into a database. One of the key challenges that this client we worked with had was it was extremely expensive. Building that using things like OpenAI, and it was very expensive. The time to analyze a call took a lot of time, look at all those prompts and questions and transcription. So one of the things that we did is move to an open source model, which is much lighter and smaller. And also through many different tricks of micro batching and queuing and optimizing GPU usage and so on, we managed to reduce the cost eventually by at least a magnitude the cost per analyzing a call, as well as the time it takes to analyze a 15-minute or 5-minute call. We shrank it by at least an order of magnitude. That has a huge impact because the application from being, too expensive to implement became something that could reach the bar and something that it could actually use in production. And again, there's a great impact on this client. This is a bank in Europe, and they've seen the impact on one end on the client engagements, as well as on the technology. The improvement that we've done made it feasible and scalable and usable for their application. So with that, I'll move into a demo of this application. Again, this application is open source, so you can find it in GitHub in MLRun. And there's when you clone the Git, you'll see there's a notebook that tells the story, but there's also source code and other things built into that. The notebook is broken to two elements. One is actually generating fake calls. So if you want to build your own fake calls in a certain topic, there's the first part is doing that, but I'll skip the calls generation, and we'll use the data from calls that we already generated. So essentially, we have a pipeline for call analysis that has many different steps. Let's scroll down to the pipeline. We have the calls. We need to do this diarization, breaking the audio to segments. We can update the database with all those different calls. We do transcription on those calls, doing PII recognition and filtering, doing analysis, and answer post-processing. One of the interesting things is that most of those functions are library functions. You actually don't need to write any of the code here. I'll show you one in a second. And the only thing you need to do is essentially build a pipeline that has those different steps. Again, you have those different steps. For each one of the steps, you provide arguments, and you just run this pipeline. And this essentially takes a batch of audio calls and converts it into a table in the database. When we launch the pipeline, we can actually see the pipeline in MLRun in this case. And for example, let's take this step of PII recognition. We could look at the cool artifacts. This is showing us what it actually did in terms of PII detection and filtering. So it actually identified entities and other elements in the text and replaced them and anonymized them based on the policy of this component. And again, you have other things like analysis. The analysis generated a table with all the different things, like what is the summary of the call, what is the main topic, and so on. And then we have sort of post-processing that does a bunch of cleansing and anti-hallucination and so on. This essentially has some other output, essentially the same thing, just cleaned and usable. Again, you see all those empathy, kindness, and so on. There are a lot of different challenges how to get the LLM to give you a right score. If you want, talk to us offline. We'll share with you all our war stories on that. But eventually, it updates the database with all the information about those calls. Now, if we go into an application that we built using some gradio that just browses the database, it's a SQL database that stores all the calls. We can see this table of information. Let's select one of the calls, for example, this one. And if we go with the call, I hope I'm sharing audio.
Hola.
You hear my audio?
Yes, we do.
¿Con quién tengo el placer de hablar hoy?
Hola Fernando, mi nombre es Miguel García.
Hola Miguel, ¿podrías confirmarme tu correo electrónico y número de teléfono?
I'll stop that just to show you I'm not faking. So this is a real call in Spanish, and this is the transcription of that call. But if you go into each column in the database, you'll see all the different aspects we mentioned, like what is the main topic. Instead of reading through the entire conversation, you can just say, oh, you know what, this guy negotiates pricing, or this one has a problem with the slow internet speed, and we could, use those classifications. We can also tell the LLM, give me a class out of given classes, so it won't be free text. You can say, okay, I have 10 categories. Make sure you match the conversation to one or more of these categories. So that just, you can see how you can build something that takes audio calls and generates lots of insights. And then you could do many different things with those insights. Each of those columns is essentially a prompt. Now, as I mentioned before, the pipeline is using pre-built components that are all hub functions. In Amaran, you have the function hub. If you go to the Amaran function hub and you search, you have the question answering a component. This is where you can see an example of how to use it. You can even see the source code and testing and all that has versioning. So again, you don't need to write any code. You just need to stitch a pipeline with all those different steps. Okay, with that, let's move to the next example. So what we've seen is batch. One of the real challenges is with real time.
The real challenge is transcribing the audio in real time. While the user or the client is talking, we want to analyze the call information, pass it to an LLM, and do some analysis. So here is a code that our team built in order to transcribe audio from an incoming stream in real time and send the text chunks to a different application. We'll see how it's used later on in a specific Copilot application. So here we're essentially initializing a class that our team built, leveraging the open source Whisper model with a local GPU. And we added code for noise cleansing, identifying gaps in voice, and a few other functions. And so here we initialize that class that we built. There is a small front-end application, essentially just having an audio recording button. And what it does, it takes the audio, send it as chunks into the backend transcription model and responds with the text. So in order to run the application, we just take this cell that builds the interface. We run it, it will generate the gradio application. Once it's ready, we can open it on a separate tab and launch it. You can see it here. In this tab, we can essentially just go record and convert the knowledge into text. This text could later be used for various applications. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our webinar series. Here you will learn different topics of machine learning.
Yeah, so what you've seen is essentially building a code that we don't want to do just batch things, we want to do real time. So this tool, this library that I just showed you is used in a bigger application that I'll show in a second, which is a real-time copilot. So when the client talks to the agent, there is a recommendation system to the agent in real time that tells the agent what to tell the client based on knowledge about the company, about the client, about the products, and so on. So this is the application we built together with the Gen AI Labs group in McKinsey. And what you can see is, again, you have the chat, you have the recommendation that keeps on coming based on the progress of the call. So I'll launch the video we recorded here.
Hello, my name is Jane Doe from the customer service. How may I help you today? Hi, I was supposed to travel, but I got sick and the doctor said I should stay home. So I'd like to cancel the trip. I'd like to get my money back, have insurance with you. It should be possible, no? Oh, I'm sorry to hear about your illness, Miss Johnson. I'll definitely assist you with determining your claim. First, I will need to ask you a few questions to determine the level of coverage you're entitled to. Can you confirm that you have paid at least 50% of the total transport cost of the trip during your using your SAS Eurobonus World MasterCard? Yes, I have. I paid the tickets with my credit card. Thank you for the information, Ms. Johnson. Did you report your claim as soon as possible? No. Well, I just called you. I wanted to know if I could cancel the tickets and if I would get my money back. Thank you, Ms. Johnson. This is very understandable. Can you provide a medical certificate detailing the reason and the duration of your bed rest and the reason why you're unable to travel? Yes, my doctor made the certificate for me. How much did you pay for the total transport cost of the trip? The tickets cost 15,568 Norwegian crowns. Thank you very much, Ms. Johnson, for this information. So based on the information provided in the policy document, you are eligible to a full refund of your tickets. Oh, thank you so very much. This is such a relief. You're welcome, Ms. Johnson. We're here to help you. Is there anything else I can help you with today? No, that would be all.
Okay, so we've seen it's a pretty cool application that in real time we actually analyzed the call in real time with very marginal delay. You saw that in real time it's actually correcting, because while doing the transcription it may get more knowledge and rephrase the question. Those questions are passing to a backend system that uses RAG, retrieval augmentation, as well as LLM and so on, to browse different databases and documents to know what is the recommended step. And then you see the recommended step to the agent of telling him exactly how much is allowed in terms of claims, what kind of questions to ask the client, and making sure that the agent is behaving and is very effective. And this is all done again in real time. And as Oana mentioned, there's already clients using this kind of applications developed by our teams. With that, let's move to the poll.
Thanks so much, Yaron. It's unbelievable. And I don't know if you saw, but the chat is going wild with comments. We'll just quickly run a quick poll, and then we will go over to Q&A, because I also see a lot of great questions in the Q&A panel. So we'd like to hear from you. What are your greatest challenges with Gen AI? Some of you have already started sharing that with us in the chat and in the Q&A panel. But do let us know here as well. Is it data privacy? Is it biases and AI hallucinations, compliance, concerns around IP infringements, escalating costs? Maybe you don't run Gen AI workloads and that's totally fine. Or maybe there are others that we haven't thought of. So do let us know. If there are any missing, also feel free to let us know in the chat if you're seeing some challenges that are not on this list. So we'll just give it another minute, and thank you so much for filling this out. We'll just give it another second, and then we're over to the Q&A. All right. Thanks so much, everyone, for participating. So at this point, I'd like to invite our speakers back, and we'll take your questions in the Q&A panel. And there's a lot, so we'll go through them. It's really interesting to see the mix between more business-focused questions and more technical ones. We'll just go ahead and start to take some key questions here. The first one, I think, is for you, Oana.
If I can just recommend, because there's so many questions and I love the activity and the engagement. If I can just kind of point to a few of the questions from a business perspective from the list that it's open, and then move to Yaron, that would be great. I also noticed that a lot of the questions, thank you, are coming as part of comments. So if you want the questions answered, I would recommend put them in the Q&A. I think that the first one, it's about more like KPIs. And so yes, there are a lot of KPIs that we're considering. You're typically, how do you reduce demand? Is that 10? Is that 20%? How are you reducing handle time? Again, demand is also connected to digital containment. We have a lot of use cases, applications that are actually relevant to that. Other applications are relevant to the transfer rate. I mentioned a couple of things connected to handle time. So there's obviously a cost component to that. It could be handle time, spoken time, wrap up time, and so on for those of you who are in the customer service operations space. And then as we're kind of moving into the quality, because there's a question later comes on quality, is how do you actually measure effectiveness? So back in the day when conversations used to be listened to, either 2% of the calls or less, or three calls or 5 calls per agent per month, listening to that still kind of followed a bit of a cheat sheet when it comes to what to look for. So the question is, how are you taking that QA scorecard and how do you automating that so that you can actually do listening to the calls, not just for 2 calls, 3 calls per agent per month, but actually get a full visibility. How is that agent doing across the board, and how are some of the things that would impact training? So you're connecting it to performance management, you're connecting it to training, or to even other topics when it comes to providing better assistance. So these are a couple of the KPIs and quality ones. The question of hyper-personalization, yes, we've done hyper-personalization in the past. Right now you have access to real-time data, behavioral analytics as well. That's becoming at your fingertips. You're bringing predictive analytics here. But I think what Gen AI is giving us the opportunity to cater to a segment of one. So when we talk about hyper-personalization McKinsey, we're talking about what's appropriate to me in the moment that I am this day, meaning in one moment, a modality would be appropriate, and in a different moment, I prefer text versus I prefer a phone call or some other notification. So it's like, how do you put that on steroids, if you will? And that's exciting to actually see that cater to the person specifically. The last thing I'm going to address when it comes to the open questions are some of the real world examples. We touch copilots are very popular. Very popular. There are a lot of clients who've also invested in how do they work with their vendors on post-call insights, but others that Yaron and I love to talk to are really tapping into this data source. So they're taking the data from emails, from chats, from conversations, and they're actually really embedding them into their business analytics, which is exciting. Chatbots is another one that's really low-hanging fruit, and we see that quite a bit. So as you're kind of thinking about post-call summarization, copilots and chatbots are the most popular right now. We're seeing some movement when it comes to training as well. And when it comes to what do you need to do this in the contact center, you need a combination of, the domain expertise, understanding your opportunities and pain points, but I would say obviously bring that together with tech and to understand the future of the roadmap of some of the products you're currently using right now in your ecosystem and how you want to kind of connect that to your business goals. So in a nutshell, I'd say those. And at this point, I would say, Yaron, I'm moving on to you for the last.
Before you move to my side, I think another question, which I think we also discussed, was make versus buy in this space. Because obviously there are vendors in this space. Some of them are not yet up to speed in Gen AI. What's your recommendation there?
It will depend on the level of risk, the data that's being used. It depends on the application. So I would say that it's not a clear-cut decision. I would say that for some things that as I said, your CCaaS is going to start providing these capabilities within a year. They're going to be available. But I would say is try to identify ways for you to be distinctive. And that means how do you leverage your proprietary data and how is that relevant for your business? So it's not a clear answer yet on, hopefully you agree with me. The question is, this is a quickly evolving space. You need to be on top of it and really understand where you want to invest the limited funding that you have. Any other perspectives from you?
I think one thing we also discussed between the two of us was that there is synergy across applications. For example, the application that summarizes calls generate a lot of knowledge that could be used, for example, to train the chatbot to be a lot more personalized for the firm, and so on. So one of the, if you take different products that each one holds his own private data and his own sort of schema and so on, and they're not connected, you can't really tap into this pile of data. It can be useful.
Good point. Thank you. Yes.
Good. Next, Sarah. So which questions am I left with? I know.
There's quite a few here on the technical side. Many questions asking if you could share a little bit more information about the products that you used during the demo. Say a couple words maybe about MLRun. There's questions here whether it's open source, what can be viewed on GitHub, and so on. Maybe you can say a few words about that.
Yeah, so first of all, I was using MLRun, which is an open source tool that we've designed. It deals with a lot of the move for productization, automate scaling. It handles the GPUs, all of those different things. That handles them automatically. So you also have those pre-built functions that you could chain in a pipeline, and this way you don't need to develop things from scratch. One of the cool things about MLRun is also the notion of distributed computing. So all this pipeline that you've seen reuses a lot of GPUs and distributed computing because it really runs at scale. So all those things become transparent. Each one of those steps that you've seen as individual step can actually run using multiple containers, multiple GPUs, micro batching, and so on, which improves the efficiency quite a bit, at least again, an order of magnitude from our experience. MLRun is open source. Most of the demos we're building are open source. The real-time copilot is still not open source just because there's a lot of debugging to do, but we'll get that open source as well.
Excellent. Thank you, Yaron. There's also a couple questions here about governance. Can you say a few words about governance? What kind of guardrails do you recommend to put into this type of application?
Yeah, so we've shown here in the demo this notion of PII filtering, and you saw this nice annotation that you get automatically. But there are also other things around, making sure you're not taking code outside, or things around you might want to make sure there's no toxic language being responded or gotten by clients. So there are many different aspects along that line. One of the main concerns is around hallucination. So how do you make sure that the model doesn't generate answers which are either fake or harmful? And that is still an area of progress. We are developing a set of technologies in that space. I think there's going to be a webinar just on hallucinations and so on. So we'll cover that.
Watch this space. That's great. Thank you, Yaron. A couple questions here about what is needed to get started and whether smaller companies can also take on such an endeavor. Can you say a few words about that?
Yeah, I think again, as Joanna mentioned, it really depends if this space. If there are solutions in the market for the problem, and you're a small player, go and use those solutions. There are many startups popping up in this space. If you have your own data, your own application, or things that are usually more customized, then you need to build your own solution. Or if you're a large vendor that you have lots of different data assets and you can't just use an off-the-shelf a reg application, you probably want to build your own solution. In McKinsey, for example, we built Lily, which is our own knowledge application that any guy in McKinsey can go and ask questions about research and people and so on. So obviously we have lots of data to deal with, so we went ahead and buy the solution.
Right. And I would add that, and Yaron, you and I've been talking about this as well quite a bit. It's less about how big your organization is, what's your cost baseline, how many agents or so on. I think the question is, I mean, if you're only focused on cost efficiencies, I understand that. But the question is, how do you kind of think about a scalable model like next gen ops that is benefiting from this? So your resources are not just people, it's AI as well. The question is, how do you actually orchestrate that and how do you manage in the long run? So I would say like move beyond just the cost efficiency, think about the innovation you can bring for organization in your field. And then that's when you're kind of like seeing, again, tying back to the beginning of the presentation to your market share.
Yep. And using automation tools like we've shown here, obviously keeps you low on the engineering efforts.
Yes.
Next.
We'll just take one last question because we're quickly running out of time. If there's one tip, and this is to both of you, one tip that you could give our audience for getting started, what would it be?
Okay.
Your top tip.
That's a tough question. I think what I usually do is look at the videos in the space, articles, etc., and then try and do something small, which is not too risky. Again, because there are potential risks around hallucination, so I wouldn't build something that addresses that converts direct conversation directly with the client, because that can introduce some risk. But doing something that, for example, scans documents and will help me answer questions on internal documents. That's an application that's easy to build and is not too risky. If you get it wrong, nothing happens.
Right. I would say to start your learning journey as soon as possible to experiment. Start with something that's meaningful to you, like a common pain point. We talk about customer service operations just because, again, we can talk to the people, understand what's happening. We have the data to actually do some diagnostics. So know your organization, and in order to get buy-in from your leadership, like show a success case where you have a human in the loop when you know how to kind of address risk and actually do it from the beginning to end. So rather than just stop at the POC, you want to actually be able to put it in prod and actually show the benefit and show the capability and the potential to scale up. So that would be my recommendation.
That's fantastic. Thank you both. There were a couple of questions that we didn't get to, so please do. We'll put the link to our community now, to our Slack community, and we'll answer additional questions there. So for anyone that we didn't get to your question, please feel free to join us, and we'll reconnect there. I do want to take a quick moment to share the poll results with all of you, as promised. So we will do that right now. Starting with the first poll, which is where are you on your Gen AI journey? 41% of you are just learning about Gen AI. 26% have begun building a Gen AI app. 24% have a specific use case but have not started building it out yet. And 9% have a Gen AI app in production. I expect that next month and in the months to come, we'll see more people with a Gen AI app in production. So I hope you were all able to see those results. And moving on to our second poll, which was, what are your greatest challenges with Gen AI? So 55% of you said data privacy, 55% said biases in AI hallucinations, which is not surprising. 33% said compliance. 34% said escalating costs, which is a big one. We hear that all the time. Concerns around IP infringements were 19%, and the rest were either other or don't run Gen AI workloads just yet. At this point, I'd like to invite you to log on to our website, iguazio.com/MLOps. There are previous sessions of the MLOps Live webinar series that you can browse through and just take a look at your convenience. There's also lots of blogs, best practices, case studies, and more resources for you. So really feel free to check it out and let us know what you think. And at this point, I'd just like to thank Yaron and Oana so much for this great presentation. And thanks to all of you for the great questions and great engagement in the chat. Really appreciate all of you coming down, and we look forward to seeing you at the next session. Thanks so much.
Thanks. Bye.